Hey guys, Alexis here today. Welcome back to my channel. In this video, I'm gonna go through the top 10 culture shocks I had when I moved to Switzerland. Okay, so a little bit of background about me if you don't already know. My name is Alexis and I am from New York City originally, and I now live in Switzerland with my Swiss husband. So in this video, I'm gonna go through the top 10 culture shocks that I experienced moving to Switzerland. So some of these will be pretty significant differences that I've experienced, and some are just things that I think are kind of funny day-to-day things that are still quite different than life in New York City. To preface all of this before we get into it, you know, these culture shocks moving to Switzerland will really depend on your country of origin. So I was coming from the US, so moving to Switzerland, there's still, you know, two Western countries. The differences aren't extreme, but there are still some pretty unique differences moving to Switzerland and living here for the first time. So without further ado, let's get into the top 10 culture shocks. Okay, so the first difference is the presence of the military, or at least that I saw. So I can imagine that coming from an American, this is gonna sound rich. But I was surprised with how many people I saw in the military in Switzerland. So if you don't have background, the military is mandatory in Switzerland for men only once you're 18. You can't get out of this. My husband got out of it, but you do have to pay a tax penalty if you get out of it. So I think there's quite a bit of compliance with people in the military at 18. So with, you know, all these young people in the military, you'll see them on the trains, especially on the weekends when they're going home. And they'll be in uniform and they'll be carrying a huge bag of rifles, and like sometimes you'll see a group of guys with guns drinking beers on the train, and they're like 18 years old, and it's just really normal here. But it's something that was very different for me, and you know, definitely just took a bit of getting used to. Okay, so this one's kind of silly, but it's still a cultural difference. It's the way people say hello. So I was kind of prepped for the way people say hello in Europe, which is a 2 kisses on the cheek, and here it is 3. So it's 3 kisses on the cheek back and forth. I feel like that leaves a lot of room for being uncomfortable in the middle passes, but it's just something that's really different. If you're American, or if you know a lot of Americans, I think you know that we're typically huggers, and Americans go in for hugs a lot. And here I find that that's a little bit too comfortable, and people just feel that you're a little too comfortable with them if you go in for a hug and you're not particularly close. So I've definitely had my fair share of awkward encounters, you know, meeting people for the first time and going in for a hug, and they give you like a kind of backed up pat. So I would say if you're coming here, just be prepared that you'll give people 3 kisses on the cheek, hello, and sometimes goodbye. But yeah, that's just the way they greet people here. I actually think it's kind of charming now that I've been here for a little while, but it was definitely awkward for me when I first moved, and you would go in for a hug and people are going to kiss you on the cheek, not once, but 3 times. So it's definitely something that's a little bit different, not just from the US, but from other European countries as well. I think that 3 kisses is quite unique. Okay, so the third difference, and I think this is gonna be the first significant one, and one that's actually been a bit of a challenge for me personally, is how patriarchal Switzerland is. So it's patriarchal in the sense of it has the kind of values of a classical family unit, meaning that gay marriage still isn't legal, and then there's still some, I think, hardships to being a woman in the workplace. So to give some background, Switzerland federally didn't have the right for women to vote until 1971. So some cantons granted it before that, but federally it was not until 1971. And the last canton, I think, didn't actually give it until the early 90s. And that was like a canton that tends to be more rural, but still women haven't been in the voter force in full for, you know, until modern history. So that's some background there, and I think there's a few contributing factors to this, but women are typically not in the workplace. So the last statistic I read is that once women have a child, only 1 in 5 will ever be full-time in the workforce again, meaning once you have a child, 80% of women will never hold a full-time position again. They might work 2 days a week. I find that really common in Switzerland. A lot of the older women I know work 2 or 3 days, but women are typically not super integrated into the workforce, and I think there's a lot of reasons for that. But I think one is the school systems. A lot of them close for lunch for 2 hours, which means somebody needs to be home to feed their kids. Childcare is really expensive, so it can often equate to being a full-time salary, how expensive childcare is, as well as the salaries are just really high. So if you're a, you know, 2-person household with young children, there tends to be one of the person working, and that happens to be the man more often than not. So there just tends to be a lot of one income households. It's a different society, so I'm not saying one is better than the other and one is worse. It's just very different for me coming from New York City, where I felt like everybody I knew was a working woman. They had kids, they still went to work. It's very different here, and I've definitely experienced myself interviewing for jobs where they can put if they want a man or a woman in the job descriptions. That's legal. So there's a lot of interesting things about Switzerland being a very patriarchal society, but that to me is the most significant difference I've noticed, and the one that I've personally struggled with the most. So if you are an expat in Switzerland, I think that will depend on your country of origin, but I'd love to know if anybody here watching this has had a similar experience to me. Yeah, we could just chat about it in the comments. And this next one is, you know, kind of lighthearted again, and that is just the little bit of lack of spontaneity that I see in Swiss people. So when we want to hang out with our friends, me and my husband who is Swiss, we schedule it weeks in advance. And I also find that you don't have the casual grabbing a drink after work with your coworkers. I think everything is really, really scheduled, but the definite benefit of that is when I was in New York, I would feel like I'd have to follow up with people a few times, like, you know, before we're gonna go, hey, you still coming? You still down for this? Like, this doesn't happen in Switzerland. If you make plans with someone, they will be there at that time. So it's nicer, but I will say that I do miss a little bit of the spontaneity of just like grabbing the after work drink. But you can rest assured that if you have plans with a Swiss person to get lunch or dinner in a week or two, that you do not need to confirm. The lunch or dinner will proceed as scheduled. Okay, so this next one is actually an amazing benefit for Switzerland, and that is the policy of vacation and sick days. So most companies in Switzerland offer 25 days of paid vacation versus 10 days in the United States is what most people I know start with, as well as unlimited sick days. So this is one of those things where I didn't realize how strange it was until I moved to Switzerland from New York. But I used to brag to people about, in 8 years of working, I've only taken 3 sick days. And it was something that I used to be so proud to tell people, that I never take sick days. I don't get sick. I go to work every day. And that's just unheard of here. It's like, why would you only take 3? You didn't get sick more than 3 days. So here, if you're sick, you're encouraged to stay home. Obviously with the pandemic, that's an amazing kind of cultural difference to have. But I would also say that the vacations, you have not only more vacations, but when you take vacation days, I find that you're really on vacation and people respect that. When I was working in New York City, when you take a vacation, I think you're expected to be on email, checking, making sure things still move along as planned. You're on vacation, but you're still a little bit in work mentally. I find here that when people are on vacation, you could take a 2 or 3 week vacation, and that's not just a once in a lifetime honeymoon. People take that every year. You could take a 2 or 3 week long summer vacation and really be with your family, and it's respected in the workplace. People aren't following up with you. You're really on vacation. So that's really nice. It's the respect of the work-life balance when you're in the workforce, that when you're on vacation, you're on vacation. When you're sick, and people just respect that and, you know, give you time, which is definitely a nice benefit, but still a little bit of a shock coming from New York City specifically. Okay, and this next one I think it's just something funny, and I think it's almost more of a cultural shock for my husband, who is from Geneva, than it is for me, because I was prepared for this. But that is almost a dance you do with languages when you travel around Switzerland. So my husband is from Geneva, and he can speak French as well as English. I could speak English as well as, you know, pretty decently German. I did a semester of my school in Berlin, but that's Hochdeutsch, that's not Schweizerdeutsch. So the German you hear in Switzerland is Swiss German. So there's always a bit of a dance when you interact with people, that can we speak in Hochdeutsch? Can we speak in English, or can we speak in French? And when we're in Ticino, which is the Italian province, and, you know, neither my husband or myself can speak Italian, it's, are we gonna speak with them in German or in French or in English? And there's always a little bit of a dance. It's really beautiful how multilingual Switzerland is with all these different cantons, but I think it's kind of funny that my husband is from Geneva and we live in Zurich now. It's only 3 hours apart, those cities, and he's within the country that he's from, but is speaking a totally different language that he's not comfortable with. And he said, you know, it's frustrating because he spent 12 years in school studying German, but that's not the German that they're speaking in Zurich. So the languages in Switzerland, I find, you know, really beautiful how much diversity you have in languages. But the cultural shock for me is always like when you're not in, you know, the region that you're from. So if you're in the Italian part and you're French, or if you're in the French part but you speak German, like the dance of how are we going to communicate? We're 2 people from the the same country, but what's our mutually, you know, language spoken that we can talk to each other? And I find more often than not, it tends to be English, but it's like a funny little dance almost to find your common language. Okay, so this next one I actually really think is a positive as well, but it is so different than anything I've ever experienced, and that is the whole system of managing garbage and recycling. So in every canton in Switzerland except for Geneva, you need to pay, you know, something like 2 francs plus, which is like, you know, $2 and change per garbage bag. So recycling is totally free, but you pay for your garbage, and that is to incentivize people to recycle, which I think is really amazing. In New York City, you could recycle, you know, plastic bottles and cardboard, but here you can really recycle everything. So there's different locations for all these different things, but we go and we can recycle glass, and you separate the different colors, and paper and cardboard and metal, and you can recycle CDs and batteries, and you can compost, and all of this is part of the infrastructure, and all that's free. So the garbage that you throw away, that's what you pay the 2 francs for, that's your garbage bag. So all of that incentivizes people to recycle because the recycling is free, and if you're gonna throw things away, you're gonna have to pay for it. And I actually think it's a great system because Switzerland recycles a huge percentage of what they consume. I can put some, you know, statistics here, but Switzerland just recycles so much, and it all is a circular economy, which is something that I wish happened more in the US. I came from quite a liberal state, so from New York, and New York had one of the better recycling programs in the United States. If you're somewhere like Wyoming or some different states, you can't even recycle certain items. You don't have the opportunity to. So this is one of those cultural shocks, which I actually think is amazing, and it's a really great benefit how many things you're just able to recycle, and how people are not only incentivized to recycle, but they're compliant, and they, you know, everything is getting used again if it can, which I think is really important for everyone's future. Okay, so this next one is kind of funny, and that is the strict rule following. So I live in Zurich now, and if it is 11 at night and I am, you know, in a suburb of Zurich and the light to cross the street is red and there's nobody there, there's like no cars coming, if I cross the streets and someone sees me, somebody will probably say something. So I've encountered this a lot. I've lived in Germany as well, and I think it's similar there, and I don't know if it has to do with the Germanic cultures, but there is a significant culture of rule following. So if you're crossing the light when the thing is red, someone's gonna tell you. If you're recycling after hours, I think somebody might tell you. So recycling has hours that you can do it because it's noisy to recycle glass. So if you're recycling glass on a Sunday, someone might let you know. If you're just, you know, not following the rules, I think people will tell you. If you're really loud in a train, someone might let you know. I think in Switzerland in general, there's like a strict culture of rule following, and the expression that I always say is alles in Ordnung, and that's the German expression, everything in its order. But I find that very true in Switzerland, which is very funny for me, having lived in Manhattan. I think you'd look crazy if the light was red and there were no cars and you were just waiting. So yeah, that's like a silly, not like significant culture shock, but it's something to know if you are a tourist in Switzerland and there's no cars coming, and you see that the light's red but there's no cars, and you're just gonna go for it. You can, but somebody is probably gonna wag their finger at you a little bit. Okay, this next one was more of a shock for me when I first moved here, but I would say that I've grown to like it, I think, towards the end, but it's still very different, and that is Sundays. So everything is closed on Sundays except for maybe a store in the train station. So you can't go to the shops, you can't, you know, run errands like you would normally. The grocery stores by you will be closed. So Sundays to me used to be a day to, you know, get my cleaning together, run errands, get prepared for the week. And here Sundays are really a day to be with your family. Everyone goes hiking to enjoy nature, to have a nice meal together. There isn't this kind of gotta get prepared for the week, gotta do all these things. People just really relax on Sunday, which I find nice now, but in the beginning was a bit of a shock. And it even goes within your own home. So the apartment I'm in now, we lease it, and within our lease it says that we can't do any home renovations on a Sunday. I can't vacuum on a Sunday. I shouldn't do the laundry on a Sunday. So things that are really noisy and might disturb people, you also can't do. So it's definitely a bit of a shock when you first moved here, but I will say now that my husband and I, you know, both participate in the Swiss way of life and enjoy it. So on Sundays, we'll take the train and go for a hike, and that's where you'll see where all the Swiss people are. So if you're walking around a city on a Sunday, you might not see anyone, but if you take a train into the Alps, you'll see tons of people and they're hiking here, ready to go walking and be with their family. It's a different experience, but it's something that I like. It's a nice way to slow down and just enjoy the last day of the weekend before you get back into the work week or the school week or, you know, whatever phase of life you're in. I think Sunday is really a nice day to be with your family and just relax and not do anything crazy. And yeah, I definitely like it now, but I will say that when I first moved here over the summer, Sundays were I was always itching to like, let me go to the grocery shopping. I need to vacuum. I need to do all these things. And now you just learn to kind of, you know, relax. So if you're watching this and you're European and you're watching an American talk about their culture shocks, maybe you were waiting for this one, but my last one is the drinking culture. So in the US, I'm sure most of you know, you can't drink until you're 21 years old. And I would say 99% of the United States, except for a few cities like New Orleans and Las Vegas, have open container laws. So you cannot drink alcohol openly outside. And in Switzerland, you can drink alcohol freely outside, and you can drink beer and wine from the age of 16, and you can start drinking hard liquor at the age of 18. So for me, it's always quite funny. I can remember a weekend where my husband and I were in Adelboden, which is in the Alps, and we were in a restaurant, and there was like a group of teenagers drinking beer, and it was so open, and still to me, I was like, are they allowed to be here? But yes, they are, so they can drink. But yeah, that's my last kind of funny culture shock. I definitely prefer it here, but it's something to note that if you're coming from the US, you can just grab a bottle of wine, hang out on the lake. It's totally okay. You can do it from when you're a teenager. So it's just something really different, but that to this day to me is so ingrained that when I see like teenagers drinking outside, it feels like you need to hide and you're doing something wrong. I mean, we all did it in the US too, right? But you hide it in the paper bag and you're afraid the whole time. And here it's just open and legal. So it's definitely really nice, but it's still to this day for my American brain, like something that shocks me when I see it. And then I have to remember like I'm in Europe and you can do these things. Okay, so those of you who made it this far, thank you so much for watching. That is it for me and my top 10 biggest culture shocks living in Switzerland. If you made it to the end and you're not already, please consider subscribing. It really helps us to grow. And if you want to catch up with me between uploads, you can follow me on Instagram at The Traveling Swiss. Me and my husband post there more often than we post here, and we often like to co-create videos with you. So this video was actually inspired by a lot of messages I got on Instagram from expats like myself living in Switzerland and sharing their experiences. So if you want to be part of the creation and production of those videos, definitely follow us there. But that's it for us, guys. Thank you so much for watching, and we'll catch you next time. Hey guys, thanks for watching.
Thanks for watching.
If you want to see more videos like this, please make sure to like and subscribe. We'll see you soon.